story kicks off in a mysterious world floating thousands of miles above the sky. A place where just showing up basically meant signing your own death warrant. And yet, a handful of soldiers risked everything to climb up there anyway. But it didn't take long before they came face to face with the biggest, most terrifying beast this world had ever seen. Jack caught the sound of it coming and dunked his head underwater instantly, hiding for his life. That's when a massive leg came crashing down nearby, sending a flock of sheep scattering in panic. The giant reached down, snatched one up, and swallowed it whole, raw. Jack watched in horror, barely able to breathe. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers hiding behind a tree made the mistake of glancing back at the creature. Big mistake. The giant caught his scent instantly. The soldier ducked back behind the tree, but the giant kept closing in with those massive strides. Holding his breath wasn't going to save him. Panic took over, and he bolted. Too late. He was already spotted. Without wasting a second, the giant ripped the entire tree out by its roots and hurled it aside. The soldier ran for his life, but there was no outrunning legs that long. One quick lunge and the giant knocked him out cold. Seeing a human up close for the first time, the giant leaned down, studying him curiously. Just as he was about to scoop him up, the captain came charging in with his sword and drove it straight into the giant's heel. The beast howled in pain and spun around, only to casually kick the captain aside like he was nothing. Then he calmly pulled the sword out of his heel, grabbed both soldiers, and carried them off to eat. Watching all this unfold from a distance, Jack finally realized just how badly he'd messed up by coming here in the first place. See, a while back, a priest had handed Jack a handful of magic beans, and the moment his girlfriend, a literal princess, came to visit him, one of those beans touched water and started growing like crazy. Suddenly, the whole wooden house started shaking violently, and terrifying noises started coming from beneath the floor. The two of them froze in fear, and then the ground just split open. A massive vine tore straight through the house, shooting up toward the sky. The princess tried to run, but a table came crashing down on top of her. Jack rushed to help her, but the vines flung him clean out of the house. Right then, a wooden door swung open, giving the princess a way out. But just as she tried to escape, the vines slammed the door shut on her. She struggled to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge an inch. Jack grabbed an axe, ready to hack through the vines, but the entire house, roots and all, was already being ripped up into the sky. At the very last second, Jack leapt and grabbed the edge. The vines were growing so fast that within seconds, the house was already thousands of feet in the air. Jack swung the axe with everything he had, cutting through the vine. The second it snapped, the princess yanked the door open, but the floor beneath her feet gave way. Even holding onto his hand, she plunged from 10,000 feet up. Jack went sliding down the vines after her, and luckily they slowed his fall just enough that he crashed to the ground and blacked out. The princess wasn't so lucky. The vine dragged her clean across to the other side of the sky. The next morning, Jack woke up in a panic to find the king standing right in front of him, frantically searching for his daughter. Jack had no choice but to spill the whole story. When he pointed up at the sky, everyone turned to see a massive vine tearing straight up into the heavens. The moment the king understood what really happened, he wasted no time. He sent a squad of soldiers with Jack to rescue the princess. Soon enough, the group was climbing the vine, pushing past the clouds. The captain took the lead, sliding across from one side to the other since it was the only way to reach the princess. Jack reluctantly took off his belt and geared up, but just as he psyched himself up to go, a curly-haired guy standing next to him gave him a hard shove and sent him flying forward. The height alone nearly broke Jack. Halfway across, his grip slipped and he started plummeting straight down. But by sheer luck, the vines caught him mid-fall. The moment he came to, he climbed right back up without hesitation. As they reached the top, the weather turned brutal. Fierce storms and crackling lightning everywhere. Suddenly, a bolt struck one of the soldiers directly, sending him sliding and knocking others down with him. At the last possible second, one soldier grabbed the rope tight, somehow saving the rest of the group. But the ones who'd fallen were now dangling helplessly in mid-air. If they weren't pulled up fast, the whole team was in danger. That's when Roderick turned to the man next to him and said, "Cut the rope." The guy loved the idea. He pulled out a hidden knife from his boot without hesitation. The dangling soldiers begged him not to do it. He didn't care. He cut the rope and they dropped 10,000 feet straight down. Somehow, the rest of the group made it to the top just as dawn broke. When Jack turned around, what he saw left him stunned. An entire massive world existed above the clouds. Everyone pressed forward toward it in awe. That's when the captain spotted fresh footprints on the ground. Proof the princess never made it back down. She was somewhere up here. As they stepped out of the cave, the sheer scale of this world left even the captain speechless. It was way bigger than anyone expected. They pushed forward, scanning the area, and spotted broken branches, signs the princess had left behind. Jack even found the very book he'd once given her lying on the ground. The snapped branches told them everything. Some dangerous creature had grabbed the princess and taken off with her. The group split into two teams and headed off in different directions to track her down. Jack and his team reached a river where they spotted a herd of plump, healthy sheep. Starving after days without food, they decided to catch one and cook it. But the second they moved in, they accidentally triggered a hidden trap. Jack whipped out his knife and started slashing through the net with everything he had, while the captain worked on cutting the rope. Then the captain noticed something off. All the crows nearby suddenly scattered in a panic, and the sheep bolted in the opposite direction. Something felt wrong, but he kept cutting anyway, and the two of them finally broke free from the net. That's when a bone-chilling roar echoed through the forest, and a massive giant stepped out, grabbing both soldiers and hauling them away. Jack quietly trailed behind the giant, waiting for the right moment to save both his friends and the princess. Meanwhile, Roderick and the other two soldiers reached the edge of a cliff. The bald guy figured searching there was pointless and started heading off to look elsewhere. That's exactly when Roderick made his move. "Hey look, there's Isabelle!" The moment the bald man turned back toward the cliff to look, Roderick shoved him straight into the deep ravine without a second thought. His buddy burst out laughing at the sight, right before a giant hand suddenly grabbed him. A massive giant, big as a mountain, appeared right behind him. Roderick dropped to the ground in terror, frantically digging through his bag. Just as the giant reached out to grab him, Roderick pulled out a glowing crown. The instant the giants saw it, they froze completely, like some invisible force had locked them in place. Turns out, this was a magical crown. Whoever wore it, giants were bound to obey without question. Meanwhile, Jack had followed the giants all the way to their hideout, and the sight left him speechless. Waterfalls, towering mountains, it looked like something straight out of paradise. And there, locked in a cage, was the princess, guarded by a two-headed giant. The giant dragged her out to where the rest of the pack had gathered, all eyes on her. Then the giant who'd captured the captain and the heavy-set soldier returned, tossing both of them near the cage. Suspicious that more humans might be lurking around, the two-headed giant grabbed the heavy-set soldier off the ground, snapped his neck, and swallowed him whole, alive, before spitting his armor back out. Just as the giant turned to threaten the captain, warning he'd be next, a voice rang out, one that grabbed everyone's attention. It was Roderick, the traitor. The moment the giant spotted the crown on his head, they all instantly dropped to their knees. His real plan was finally out in the open. He walked straight up to the two-headed giant and ordered him to kneel. Left with no choice, the giant bowed. Roderick then stepped on his face and calmly walked toward the throne, and just like that, he crowned himself the new ruler of the giants' world. He declared war on humanity, announcing his plan to conquer the entire world. His giant army roared with excitement, but the two-headed giant clearly had something else brewing in his mind. Meanwhile, the giant hauled the captain off to cook him, tossing him straight onto a pile of sticky dough. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. The giant then slapped a fistful of dough right over him and folded him aside. All that was left was to add the vegetables. The moment the giant went off to grab them, Jack sneaked in. The princess lit up seeing him, but he quickly signaled her to stay quiet. While the giant was still distracted, Jack crept over to her and tried picking the cage's lock. No luck. She told him to save the captain first, who'd been stuffed in a line with the pigs. Jack rushed over, knife in hand, and started cutting him free from the dough. Just as the giant returned with spices, Jack quickly handed the captain the knife and hid himself. Luckily, the giant didn't suspect a thing. He grabbed some sharp skewers and jabbed one straight into a squealing pig right in front of the captain. The pig went silent instantly. Now it was the captain's turn. The giant struck without mercy, missing by a hair, otherwise that would have been the end of the captain's bloodline. Terrified, the captain passed out. The giant then tossed all of them into a burning furnace nearby. The only one left to save them now was Jack. By this point, Jack had climbed onto an iron ring above, completely undetected. The giant grabbed a razor-sharp knife and moved toward the princess, reaching in to pull her out and lay her on the table, ready to cut. That's when Jack grabbed a heavy knife lying nearby. Just as the giant was about to strike the princess, Jack drove the blade straight into his spine. The giant howled in agony, but Jack held on tight. Losing control, the giant slammed into a wall and died on the spot. The princess and the captain stood there, stunned. The three of them rushed toward the magic vine, but a giant was already guarding it. One Roderick had stationed there. That's when Jack came up with a wild plan. He grabbed a beehive, and together with the captain, crept up toward the sleeping giant. The captain lifted the giant's helmet, and Jack shoved the entire hive inside. The giant, still fast asleep, had absolutely no clue what was coming. The moment the hive went in, the captain slammed the helmet shut, and the two of them sprinted off to hide behind a nearby rock, waiting. Before long, the giant jolted awake, stung all over, thrashing wildly to shake off the bees. But the more he panicked, the more they attacked. He stumbled around in a blind panic, slipped, crashed into rocks, and tumbled straight toward the cliff's edge. It looked like he was about to fall, but at the last second, he yanked off his helmet. The three of them froze for a second, until one bee zipped straight at him and stung him again. He lost control completely and plunged over the edge. The three of them cheered, hardly able to believe they'd just taken down a giant that huge with something as simple as a beehive. They were ready to leave when the captain suddenly stopped. He said he needed to stay behind to take the crown back from Roderick. So Jack handed him the knife and started heading down with the princess. Meanwhile, the giant who'd fallen crashed down near the vines and finally hit the ground. The loud crash brought the king rushing out of his tent, and the sight of this monstrous giant sent him into a panic. Villagers gathered around in shock. Reluctantly, for the safety of his people and to stop more giants from coming through, the king made a tough call. He ordered the general to cut down the vine. Soldiers drove massive iron spikes into the giant vine, attached heavy-duty hooks, and started pulling it down with the help of oxen and horses. Slowly, the giant vine began to shake loose from its roots, but that put the soldiers nearby in serious danger. Suddenly, the thick middle section of the vine started snapping, and soldiers up top began falling, sending everyone into chaos. Meanwhile, Jack and the princess were making their way down the vine when they looked below and froze in terror. The vine had gone completely out of control and could collapse any second. Jack seized the moment, grabbed the princess tight, and lunged for a hanging branch. The two of them swung through the air, hurtling toward the ground. When they finally landed, a pile of hay cushioned their fall, and somehow, they both made it down safe. Right around then, Roderick rallied all the giants, gearing up to launch an attack on humanity. Just as the two-headed giant sensed a human nearby, the captain quickly hid. Roderick stepped forward and pulled out the magic beans meant to grow more vines, but out of nowhere, the captain lunged at him, knocking the beans out of his hands and sending Roderick tumbling straight into a pit. Panicked, Roderick screamed for the giants while the captain squared up to fight him alone. The two-headed giant ordered the others to break through the rocks and pull him out. As the giants tore through stone, the fight between the captain and Roderick kicked off below. Roderick swung his long sword and knocked the captain down, sending his weapon flying out of reach. Seizing the opening, he unleashed a relentless barrage of attacks. The captain barely managed to block, and the two of them locked into a brutal struggle of strength. Soon, the captain started losing ground, and Roderick shoved his head underwater. Just then, the captain spotted the knife drifting toward him in the water. He caught it with his teeth at the perfect moment and slashed Roderick straight across the face. Furious from the surprise attack, Roderick used his weapon to shove the captain back, forcing him all the way to the edge. With one hard kick, Roderick sent him tumbling down, but the captain managed to grab hold of the rocks. Roderick pressed the sword down onto his hands, trying to make him lose his grip and fall, but he underestimated the captain's strength. The moment Roderick lunged again, the captain grabbed the very sword aimed at him and drove it straight into Roderick's own leg. Roderick screamed in agony, and the captain used that split second to plunge the blade deep into his gut. The sudden, brutal blow finished him off right there. The instant he died, the crown's magic power vanished with him. The captain climbed his way up, reaching for the crown. But just then, the cave above collapsed, and the two-headed giant grabbed the crown first. He slid it onto his finger and declared himself the new ruler. The second he put it on, his power surged right back, and every giant around him dropped to their knees. That's when the captain noticed the last remaining vine leading back to Earth was about to snap and fall any second. Without hesitation, he jumped straight onto it. As the vine hurtled toward the castle, the captain timed his jump perfectly and dove straight into the water below. Watching the last path back to the human world collapse sent the two-headed giant into a rage. That's when the smaller head pointed to a bag lying on the ground, filled with magic beans. The giant grabbed it, opened his palm, and found 4 beans inside. Thrilled, he blew on them and tossed them straight into the water. The moment the beans hit the water, they exploded into growth, and within seconds, 4 massive vines tore straight up through the earth. The two-headed giant bellowed a command, and every giant climbed aboard, heading straight for the human world. At the last second, he leapt down too, sliding along the vines toward the ground below. At that exact moment, Jack was giving his horse some water when he glanced up at the sky and spotted the giants descending fast. Without wasting a second, he jumped on his horse and rode off to warn the king. Meanwhile, the king's army was marching calmly toward the castle. Jack spotted them and screamed at the top of his lungs that the giants were coming, but nobody took him seriously. That's when a swarm of giants burst out of the forest behind them, tearing through everything in their path. Nothing could stop them. The giant army closed in fast, grabbing a soldier and swallowing him whole, alive. Not even the men on horseback could outrun them. Humans stood completely helpless against this force. One round-faced giant ripped the blade off a nearby windmill and hurled it straight toward the princess. It slammed into the ground, shattering everything around it, even knocking the crown clean off the king's head. Soldiers stationed at the castle spotted the king's army approaching and sent word inside to prepare for battle. The captain immediately had soldiers pour oil into the moat to hold off the enemy. The moment the king's forces reached the castle, he gave the order to fire, and hundreds of flaming arrows rained down on the giants below. The instant the arrows hit the oil, flames erupted everywhere, giving the king's army just enough cover to make it safely inside the castle. Relieved to see the princess safe, the captain immediately ordered the gates shut, but Jack was still outside, with giants closing in fast behind him. Just as the gate started closing, Jack panicked, but at the very last second, he leapt through with his horse and made it inside. The two-headed giant, however, managed to climb up right behind him and got a foot on the gate. The captain lunged at him instantly, sending him crashing straight into the roaring flames below. The fire consumed him completely. Strangely enough, even his own kind just stood there and watched him burn, making no move to save him. While everyone was still processing what just happened, a massive iron bell came crashing down from the sky, smashing through the castle wall. Before anyone could even react, the war horn blared. 2 massive iron hooks came flying toward the castle gate, and giants began hauling on them with everything they had, sparking a brutal tug of war between humans and giants. Turns out, this was all part of the round-faced giant's plan. He'd called in reinforcements to break the gate down completely. Chaos erupted inside the castle. The princess grabbed Jack and ran deeper inside. The old king ordered all his soldiers to man the crossbows and hold the giants off. More giants poured in, pulling with everything they had. On the captain's command, soldiers fired a volley of crossbow bolts straight into the wooden gate. Once they landed their shot, the soldiers quickly pulled the crossbow carts back. The castle's forces split into units, and the king himself joined in, asking the captain about any weaknesses the giants might have. That's when a burning tree came crashing down from above, scattering soldiers in every direction. More flaming trees followed, raining down and forcing men to loosen their grip. It looked like the gate was seconds from giving way. Right then, the princess reached the inner part of the castle with Jack, but a deafening roar and cracks splitting across the ground stopped them cold. Terrified, they backed away as chunks of stone flew into the air. Suddenly, 2 enormous hands burst up from below. It was the 2-headed giant, the one everyone thought had burned to death. Turns out he'd survived because he was underwater when the flames hit, and he'd quietly slipped into the castle through the sewers. He caught the scent of royal blood almost instantly. Jack, terrified, pulled back the blanket just enough to check. The giant hadn't spotted them yet, but in his fury, he smashed a nearby mirror, and the sound sent both of them trembling under the blanket. Then the giant looked straight down and saw them. Jack grabbed the princess and bolted with everything he had, but the giant kept right on their heels. With nowhere left to run, they scrambled toward the second floor, not daring to slow down for even a second. Out of nowhere, a hand shot out from the side and grabbed the princess. Jack grabbed the nearest axe and swung at it without hesitation, but the giant caught him with his other hand. The smaller head sneered, mocking Jack. Furious, Jack swung the axe straight at his helmet, cracking it open. Enraged, the giant opened his massive jaws wide. That's when Jack pulled out the magic bean hidden in his locket and hurled it straight into the giant's mouth. It went straight down into his stomach, and almost instantly, something felt very wrong inside the 2-headed giant. He slammed both of them to the ground in pain. Suddenly, a vine burst out of his body, and both of them scrambled back in shock. More vines exploded out of him at breakneck speed, tearing the hall apart completely. In the chaos, the king's crowned hand landed right next to Jack. Outside, soldiers were still struggling to hold the giants back. But with a single roar from the round-faced giant, they all pushed forward together, mowing down soldiers one by one. The castle gate slowly creaked open. The captain immediately called for soldiers to seal the iron door shut. Right then, the round-faced giant emerged from the mist with his crew, but the iron door didn't hold for long. With one powerful blow, he smashed straight through it. He and his fellow giants stormed into the castle. Seeing the soldiers standing there, looking, in giant terms, absolutely delicious, the giants were thrilled. They were just about to attack when a voice suddenly rang out from behind, stopping every single giant in their tracks. The giant squinted through the crowd, and then, without warning, dropped his weapon. One by one, the rest of the giants followed, kneeling down before the humans. The captain stood there, completely stunned by what he was witnessing. And that's where the story ends. If you enjoyed this one, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and don't forget to like the video.